Welcome to story time. Let's start with our song. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. It's time to say hello. This week, our story time from the Grimm's brothers is Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there was a lumberjack who lived in the great north woods with his wife and his two children. There was a little boy called Hansel and a little girl called Gretel. Sometimes the lumberjack made great money. Sometimes he made none. He had been without work for months and months, and there was very little to eat in their home. And one night, as he lay tossing and turning in bed, he said to his wife, "What will become of us? How will we feed our children when we have no more than we can eat ourselves?" And his wife said, "I have an idea. We will go deep into the woods to go hunting and see if we can find food that way. We will take the children and we will leave them with a small campfire and a snack." The husband didn't really like the idea, but his wife gave him no peace till he agreed. The children, however, had not gone to sleep because they were so hungry, and so they overheard what their father and mother talked about. "Oh," said Gretel, "what will become of us?" "Shh," said Hansel, "don't cry. I'll think of something." And the next morning, before the sun arose, the mother went and woke the two children. "Get up, we're going into the forest to hunt," she said, and she gave them each some peanut butter crackers, saying, "There is something for your lunch, but do not eat them before then, for you will get nothing else." Gretel put her crackers in her pocket, but Hansel's pockets were full of cracker crumbs because he broke his all up. So they all set hiking into the deep woods. When they had gone a little way, Hansel stood still and looked back at the house. And he repeated this a few times until his father said, "Hansel, what are you looking at? And why do you keep stopping? You have to keep up." Well, every time he stopped, he dropped cracker crumbs out of his pocket on the path. And when they came to the middle of the forest, the father told the children to collect wood and he would make them a campfire so that they wouldn't get cold. So Hansel and Gretel gathered together quite a little mountain of twigs and branches. His father set fire to them, and as the flame leapt up high, their mother said, "Now, you children lie down near the fire and rest yourselves while we go into the forest to hunt. And when we are ready to come home, we will come back for you." Hansel and Gretel sat down by the fire, and when it was noon, Gretel shared her peanut butter crackers with her brother, because his were all in the crumbs along the trail. They waited so long that at last their eyes closed and they fell asleep. Oh, they were so tired. And when they finally woke up, it was dark and it was chilly. And Gretel began to cry again. "How are we going to get out of the woods?" "Shh," said Hansel. "Wait till the moon comes up. Then we will find all the crumbs which I dropped, and they will show us the way home." Well, the moon rose, and it was a full moon, and they had nice bright light, and they got up. And as they started to walk from the way they had come, there were no crumbs, for all the birds which live in the forest had ate them. And Hansel kept saying to Gretel, "We will find a way, we'll find a way." But they did not, and they walked all night long and all the next day, but they still found no way out of the great north woods, and they got so hungry. All they had to eat was the berries on the bushes. And they got so tired and they got so cold. So they curled up under a tree and went to sleep. It was now the third morning since they had left home, and they still kept walking, but they only got deeper and deeper into the dark woods. And Hansel knew that if help did not come very soon, they really would die of hunger. They were scared. About noontime, they saw a beautiful white bird sitting on a branch singing. And the bird spread its wings and flew off. But it flew slowly, and so they could follow it. And they followed it to a cottage. And when Hansel and Gretel got up close, ooh, do you know what that cottage was made of? It was made of bread and cake and candy, and the window glass was sugar. Let's go in there, said Hansel, and have a glorious feast. I will eat part of the roof, and you can eat a window. Ooh, will that not be sweet? So Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof to see how it tasted. And Gretel stepped up to a window and began to chew it. Hansel thought the roof tasted very nice, so he tore off a bigger piece, while Gretel broke out a pane of the glass, and it was just a big plate of sugar, and she sat down and ate it very happily. They were starting to think this was the best thing that could have ever happened when the door to the cottage opened, and out came a very old woman. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped what they had in their hands, but the old woman, nodding her head, said, you dear children, what has brought you here? Come in and stay with me a while. I won't hurt you. And so she took them each by the hand and led them into her cottage. She made them a good meal of milk and pancakes and apples and nuts and all kinds of jam and syrup for the pancakes. And in the room behind the kitchen, there were 2 little beds covered with quilts. And she pulled back the quilts and invited Hansel and Gretel to make themselves at home in the beds. Going to bed in a real bed with a full stomach, it was wonderful. And the old woman seemed very kind to them. But in reality, she was not a kind old woman. She was a wicked old witch, and she had built her bread and cookie and cake house in order to lure children in. But as soon as they were in her power, she cooked them and ate them. Ooh! Wicked witches have red eyes, it is said, and they cannot see very far. But they have a very fine sense of smell, so they know when children are near. And when Hansel and Gretel had come to her house, she said, "Here come 2 who shall not escape me." Early in the morning, before they awoke, she went up to them, and she saw how lovely they looked, sleeping. And she said to herself, they will be quite tasty. And then while Hansel was still asleep, she picked him up with her rough hands and shoved him in a little cage and locked the door. Ah! Screamed Hansel, but it was no use. Gretel woke up when she heard the screaming, and the witch said, "Get up, you lazy girl, and fetch some water to cook something good for your brother. We must keep him in that cage until I fatten him up, and when he is fat enough, I shall eat him." Oh, no! Gretel began to cry, but it was useless, for the old witch made her do as she wished. And so a nice meal was cooked for Hansel, and Gretel got nothing. Every morning the old witch would come to the cage and say, "Hansel, stick out your finger that I may feel whether you're getting fat." But Hansel still had some of his wits about him. He would stick out an old chicken bone, and the old witch, having very bad eyesight, thought it was his finger, and she wondered why he never gained any weight. He was always super skinny. When 4 weeks had passed and Hansel still seemed to be so skinny, she lost all patience and would not wait any longer. "Gretel," she called one morning, "get some water quickly. Be Hansel fat or thin this morning, I am going to cook him." Gretel was horrified. And early in the morning, she was forced to go out and fill a big, giant pot with water and make a fire under it so the water began to boil. "First, however," said the witch, "I want bread to go with my meal. So we will bake bread. I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." And so saying, she pushed poor Gretel up to the oven and told her to open the oven door. What her plan was to push Gretel in the oven and bake her, so that she might have both Hansel and Gretel for her lunch. But Gretel, having survived several horrors by now, figured out what the Wicked Witch was up to and said, "I don't know how." "You stupid goose," said the Wicked Witch. "You pull open the door like this." And she showed her how. Well, with the door open, Gretel pushed that Wicked Witch into the oven, shut the door tight, and jammed it shut. Oh! Howled the Wicked Witch, but Gretel ran away and left her to burn to ashes. Next, she ran to Hansel and she unlocked his door and said, "Hansel, we are saved. The Wicked Witch is dead." And he jumped down, and they were so glad that they hugged each other over and over. And now that they had nothing to fear, they went into the Wicked Witch's house where, do you know what was in every corner hiding? Boxes full of pearls and precious jewels. "Well, these are better than cracker crumbs," said Hansel, putting as many into his pockets as he could. And Gretel thought, "Well, I think I'll take some too." And she filled her pockets with pearls and gems and jewels. "Now we must be off," said Hansel, "and we must get out of this enchanted forest." But when they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a lake. It was the biggest lake either of them had ever seen. It went as far that way and as far that way as they could see. "I don't know how we're going to get across," said Hansel. "There's no bridge. I see no boats. I think we're stuck." "No," said Gretel. "There's a duck. I will ask her to help us." And so she sang a song. "Little duck, good little duck, Gretel and Hansel, here we stand. Take us on your back across to the other land." So 2 ducks came to them, and Hansel sat on one and Gretel on the other. And when the ducks realized that their passengers were on, they took off and flew across the lake until they arrived at the other side and sat down, and Hansel and Gretel got off. When they arrived at the other side of the lake, they started to recognize familiar places. It was a part of the woods which they knew better with every step. And at last they saw their parents' house, and they began to run, and bursting into the house, they fell into their father's arms. He had not had one happy hour since he had left the children in the forest. Gretel emptied her pockets of the pearls and precious gems. Hansel threw his, one handful after another on the floor. And then all their sorrows were ended, and they lived together in great happiness. And that is the story of Hansel and Gretel. I'll see you next week for another story time. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye.